Chase at the 40. Look at that move. Look at Chase go. Oh, my goodness. What a gear.
He comes down to this in his car end zone. Intercepted.
McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl.
Toss here. Nixon's going to throw. Open man. Caught. Higgins. Touchdown.
Drives. Touchdown. Joe Burrow has his first rushing touchdown of the season.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Maan. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Maan, episode 51 is here. We have a lot to get to. We are going to look over this entire roster in one show. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but we're going to go through each position and kind of look at where we sit right now. And maybe that's going to lead us into what are some needs for this football team going into free agency and the draft. But before we do, Maan, how has your week been?
It's been a good week, really good week. Just a lot of work. Getting really excited about the combine that's coming up, Jake. This next 60 days is going to be really huge for the Cincinnati Bengals and their quest to become Super Bowl champions. Free agency is going to say a lot about filling some holes and re-signing key players. And this draft coming up is going to be huge. I mean, it can mean the difference from being a multiple Super Bowl champion or to being just close and not getting in there. So what they do these next 60 days is going to be key, and it's going to be exciting to see and watch.
It is. It's going to be an exciting 60 days. I think we talked about last episode. I don't know, this free agency, I don't know why I'm so excited, because I think it's really just going to be a lot of us re-signing guys. But I'm very excited to see what the Bengals do this free agency period. I think, as I was going through and looking at this roster, there are not a lot of holes, Maan. And we talked about before on this show is that, when it comes to the draft, first of all, the Bengals are going to be able to pretty much pick best of player available, which, it's been a long time, I think, since the Bengals have actually had a need that haven't had a need that needed to be filled. I think last year, maybe you could kind of say was the closest thing we've seen to that, where the Bengals really didn't need a position filled for the draft. And you saw they went real defensive heavy last year. But offensive heavy in free agency. And that's what really I think is going to be interesting to see, is this year possibly could be defensive heavy in free agency, just the opposite, because they did fill a lot of those needs on the offensive side of the ball last year in free agency.
They did, Jake, and it's going to be big. We saw this year we had some key injuries pop up during the season, and some reserves came up and performed really well. Some of those reserves, they were, on the practice squad. They really didn't get to play much over the last 2 years, but they were being developed at that time. And then when that opportunity arose, they stepped up to the plate. And I'm going to, we're going to have to see that next year, because, Dax Hill didn't play. He did play some, but he didn't start. You have Tyson Anderson didn't get to play a lot. He was injured. Still, are they absorbing? Are they getting that playbook? Are they understanding the philosophies of this team and the defense? Are they going to be able to step in and produce? And I think they will, because I think our coaches, we did touch base on it last week, the continuity of having these coaches in there, and there's such a quality staff. They're getting these players ready. And I think what the Bengals have done the last few years in free agency, accumulating the defensive talent, drafting our star offensive players, these coaches have done a really good job getting them ready to play.
Agreed. And I think, too, when you look at this roster and the way it's developing itself out, is I think the Bengals front office has done a really good job as far as making sure that there's a consistent roster from here on out, right? I don't think we're going to see where there's going to be a year where there's a bunch of holes at different positions like we're used to seeing in the past as Bengal fans. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that. This year we do have We do have a handful of defensive free agency guys that are possibly going to have to get signed back, but we don't have a lot of offensive free agents that we really need to worry about. But let's go ahead. That's going to kind of lead us into where we are right now. So what I'm going to do, Mon, is we're going to go position by position, look at the depth chart, and see what is out there. Maybe there's a hole that we need filled in free agency or in the draft, and look to see where where we can help them out to develop this Super Bowl roster that we so badly want to see. So, real quick, at quarterback, obviously, this is not going to take very long, but obviously Joe Burrow is going to be a Bengal for a very long time, coming up here very soon. But obviously, right now, his contract situation is not one that we're really worried about. Brandon Allen is a free agent this year. They've kind of hit him up with a couple 1-year deals in a row. Just real quick, because we don't have to spend a lot of time on this position. We are set, obviously, at the starting position. But as you've seen in the NFL, it's very important to have a good quality backup guy. Does Brandon Allen come back again for another year? That would be his third year, I think. Does Brandon Allen come back this year? What do you think? I mean, he is a free agent. Are they going to throw another 1-year deal, or are the Bengals going to look elsewhere for that backup quarterback role? What do you think?
I think he will come back as the primary backup to Joe Burrow. If Maan had a say so, no, he wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
I think the team can do better. I don't have anything. Listen. Luckily, we haven't had to see him in action. That's a good thing because Joe Burrow has stayed healthy and the last 2 years and played almost every snap. I think the Bengals could do better. I would like to see a Andy Dalton type, a quarterback that has multiple starts in his career come in. Because, if the unfortunate thing happens where Joe Burrow does go down for 1 or 2 games, I feel a lot more comfortable having somebody like that there. I was very impressed with Jake Browning in the preseason. He's a gunslinger, and I could see him. He might have he probably has the best chance of unseating Brandon Allen. But going back to Joe Burrow, he's what can you say? 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Pro Football Focus has their metrics, how they rate all the players from offense and defense. 39 NFL quarterbacks rated by Pro Football Focus. Joe Burrow's number 1 by their metrics. The number 1 rated quarterback on Pro Football Focus was our guy, Joe Burrow. Jake, this is the easiest position group to talk about. He's about to be a $50 million a year quarterback, and he's going to be a Bengal for life. And hey, man, that makes Maan happy.
That makes all of us happy, and You're right. I mean, I don't need PFF to tell me he's the best quarterback. I've been saying it for 2 years. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is very dynamic, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of respect for the dude. He can play, but as far as playing the quarterback position, there is nobody better than Joe Burrow. And we're very lucky to have him. Like you say, he's going to be a $50 million a year man. All right, so let's move on here to we're going to go to a position, Mon, that I think is very interesting to me, and that's the running back position. We have Joe Mixon obviously as a starter, but Joe, we don't know what's going to happen with him. Could he be a situation? Could he be one of those cuts to help save some money for some of these other free agents? You got Samaje Perine, who is a free agent. You have Travion Williams, who is a free agent. You have Chris Evans coming back and Elijah Holyfield, which obviously we have not seen a lot of playing time from him on. But this running back position group is very interesting to me because it's almost, to me, it's going to be the most interesting one throughout this entire off season, because if Joe Mixon does get cut, which I'm not sure he is right now, but if he does get cut, Mon, that is our 3 top running backs potentially gone from this football team. And you and I have been shouting from the rooftops to get Chris Evans more playing time, but I'm not so sure Chris Evans is coming back. This is a very odd position group. What do you think, Mon? How do you see this thing unfolding? I really, I think there's a good possibility, Mon. I know this is crazy, but I think there's a good possibility that the Bengals draft running back early in this draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It's a really tough one to try to figure out. Chris Evans, I thought was going to be the sleeper player this year. He was going to be a dark horse, um, uh, you know, contributor that was going to give us 500-600 yards, another 500 yards receiving. But he's in the doghouse, and we just did not see him. And
Well, that ended up being Samaje Perine, right?
yeah,
I mean,
Perine came in.
Samaje Perine ended up carrying that load when Joe Mixon went out.
Yeah, Joe Mixon. Listen, I earlier today, Jake, I watched the Saint game that we won 30-26, and I was watching Joe Mixon in that game. He had this bounce, he had this cutting. He just looked really energized. The next week or other games, you would just see him. He just didn't have that same pep in his step, and he was just inconsistent a little bit. I just don't see. I know they would save some money salary cap wise. I really think Joe Mixon is going to stay on this team. I could see the Bengals potentially. I know they don't rework contracts. Maybe ask him to take a pay cut. He's a good locker room guy. He's energetic. You go to the home games. We were there. You see him throwing football with the kids. The fans love him. Yeah. And I could see him sticking around for another year. If not him, Perine's going to be back for another year. Perine is a very important part of our third down offense. He's an unbelievable blocker. I mean, that's one knock against Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon cannot
Well, I was going
block.
to say, Samaje Perine is the best blocking back we have on this team. And again, at the end of the Super Bowl, I hate to bring that drive up, but the reason why Joe Mixon was not in that drive is because Samaje Perine is the better blocker.
Yeah, he is, and we saw that this year also. There's a lot to digest when it comes to the run game. I don't honestly think it's a talent issue with the players. Early in the season, the run game struggled because that offensive line was trying to solidify. We had all those new starters. They were trying to figure things out. Things got a little better. They started running the ball, but the Cincinnati Bengals were 29th in the NFL in rushing. I know the offense is geared around Joe Burrow and Chase and Higgins and Boyd, and it should be. I get that. But we need to be a little better than 29th. I don't know if it's a coaching philosophy, a playbook. I don't really know what's going on there, but we need to be better than 29th in the NFL in rushing. Concerning the draft, I've seen a lot of mocks. I've seen a lot of people that I respect on social media and Twitter talking about the running back from Texas potentially at 28. I'm on the record. I don't want to draft a running back in the first round. I just think that's the Bengals have a very good roster, but their roster isn't good enough to have a running back drafted in the first round. We have to get a position that we're thin at, cornerback, offensive tackle. That's what I think this team needs to do. I could see a running back maybe in the second or third round.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, though. And I'm not saying that I agree with taking a running back in the first round. And to be honest with you, I don't agree with it. I'll be on record, too, with you. You and I actually agree on something. See, it's a new year. It's a new year, so new things are happening. I agree with you. But I'm going to play devil's advocate here because if Joe Mixon does get cut, and again, like you said, we are thin at some other positions. But if Joe Mixon gets cut, it's going to be to fill those other positions. If Joe Mixon gets cut, Mon, running back now becomes the thinnest position that we have. It does. Yeah. And, I'm not saying I want to running back at 28. I'm not saying that. But I am saying this. If Joe Mixon gets cut, they better have they better have a plan in place to get either a running back early in the draft or go out and get a, you know, a middle tier guy, and then maybe, sign Samaje to a year deal and ride Samaje for another year. But I don't know, Mon. If Joe Mixon gets cut, I'm not feeling. I don't know what to think about Samaje as the number one back. I just don't know what to feel about that. I like him. I think he's a great blocker in the pass game. I think he's become a good receiver in the pass game. You heard Joe Burrow say it many times. He's the most reliable guy in the locker room. I don't know though if he is a number one back in the NFL. I just don't. I don't think he is.
But Jay,
But I
towards the second half of the season, it became more running back by committee. It wasn't really one guy. P. Ryan and Mixon were both. Mixon maybe had a few more carries a game than P. Ryan, but they were both getting a lot of action in the game. If one of the two will be back, Mixon and or P. Ryan, and listen, we saw the Chiefs. Pacheco's a 7th round pick. The NFL is littered with 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks that are very good running backs. Of course, a 4th round pick. We don't want him to be the bell cow. He's not going to be the bell cow. But if he comes in and say P. Ryan is our starter, I think the Bengals will be okay. I did read a tweet from Joe Goodberry. He brought up a good point. It'd be great if the Bengals had a slasher type at running back. We really haven't had one of those in years. With this offense, the way they play, that would be interesting to see. You're right; it's in flux. It's going to be something to keep an eye on. Definitely to keep an eye on, and I just hope they improve from number 29 in the NFL in rushing. Take a little bit of pressure off of Joe a little bit. I know the Bengals are never going to be a run-first team, but we have to be a little better than that in the standings.
Well, we saw in that Kansas City game. I'm not blaming. There's enough to blame go around, including the referees. But the run game in that Kansas City game was non-existent, pretty much. I mean, and it wasn't. It was just we weren't even trying to run the football when we ran it over 30 times the first time we played them and beat them. So I'm with you. But let's move on because we got a big one to talk about here. Obviously, that's the wide receiver position. So at wide receiver, obviously you have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase, and you have Tyler Boyd. All three of those guys still under contract. Trenton Irwin still under contract. Stanley Morgan still under contract. Trent Taylor, our punt returner, is a free agent. Mon, this is a position that obviously, when you throw those three guys out on the field, it's the best wide receiving core in the NFL. I believe that, and you're going to have to show me anywhere otherwise that it's not. When all three of those guys are healthy, it's the best receiving core in the NFL. But there's some crazy talk going on with that too. I don't think it's going to happen. I've said it before on the show. I think T is going to be back. I think he's going to be a Bengal for a long time. But how thin is this receiving position? Because we liked Trent Irwin. Trent Irwin. He had a solid year for us. He really did. He had a solid year for what he does, and same with Trent Taylor. I mean, he did well. In special teams and in the return punt game. Stanley Morgan, might be the best special teamer on our team, as opposed to maybe between him or what's the safety's name?
Brandon Wilson?
No. The safety, 31. What's his name?
Michael Thomas.
Yeah, Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
besides Michael Thomas, Stanley Morgan could considerably be the best special teamer we have on the team. And not only that, but they love Stanley Morgan. They love bringing Stanley Morgan in when we run the football. He's a great blocker in the run game as well. How thin is this receiver position? I mean, if T. Higgins gets re-signed here in the next couple weeks, I don't know if it's one of those positions we really need to worry about. I mean, obviously Tyler Boyd situation, it's kind of up in the air as well, but how thin do you think this receiver position is?
Jake, I'm gonna sound like you right now because you're Mr. Wide Receiver guy every draft. I think we joke around that you would draft 7 wide receivers if you could. No, I think it's very thin actually. The top 3 elite. I agree with you 100%. The best trio in football. It's not even close to me. We saw what happened in that championship game. Tyler Boyd had 2 catches for 40 yards. He was on his way to a huge game. He gets hurt. They double T, they double chase. We really didn't have anybody else. We really didn't.
Yeah.
Listen, Trenton Irwin, great story, great player, and I hope they sign. He's a great wide receiver 5. He really is.
Yeah.
Stanley Morgan, wide receiver 6. Listen, wide receiver 5 and 6 are special teams guys. Yeah, and that's what he is. He's one of the best in the league. Boyd, this is probably Boyd's last year as a Bengal. Higgins is going to be there. He's going to sign a contract. Chase isn't going anywhere. The Bengals are going to draft somebody in the first. We talk, on the Twitter chatter about a running back at 28. Don't be surprised if a wide receiver falls, if the Bengals jump on it. Don't be surprised if that happens. I expect them to draft a wide receiver in the first 2-3 picks of this draft to potentially replace Boyd. We've been blessed the last 2 years. Our guys have been relatively healthy. Chase did miss 4 games. Higgins missed a few games. Boyd missed a couple, but nothing catastrophic, thank God. Yeah. But we saw what happens. Teams can the Chiefs, hey, Spagnuolo did a great job. I'm not going to let Higgins or Chase beat me. I'm just going to double him. Somebody else for the Bengals has to make a play. Well, listen, Hurst was a great story. He did good. I hope he stays on the team at tight end. We're going to talk about tight end in a few minutes. But we really struggled when Boyd went down. It would be nice to have, somebody with some speed, somebody that could put a little fear on other defenses. I expect the Bengals to address that. If Boyd stays healthy, we play in that Super Bowl against the Eagles. I'm convinced.
I'm convinced too. I'm going to be honest with you. And I hate saying that as a football coach myself. I hate saying that. But if Tyler Boyd doesn't get hurt in that Chiefs game, we win that football game. I'm telling you right now, we win it.
By 10 points.
So, I agree. I agree with the Tyler Boyd situation. Receiver early on. I'm not going to be surprised, Mom, because, again, if this roster, if they get a couple of these guys re-signed, you could see best player available. I just said that when the show started, and if the best player available is a wide receiver, I would not be surprised if we see wide receiver at 28. I really would not. And I don't even know if it would be to replace somebody. I just think the Bengals are in a situation where they could go best player available. But you're right. Trent Irwin, he's going to be on the team next year. Stanley Morgan is going to be on the team next year. I'm not sure Trent Taylor will be. I think they're probably going to try to get somebody a little bit more dynamic. But I could be wrong. Trent Taylor, he's – he is a good punt returner. I know he's not explosive and he doesn't make big plays or anything, but he's pretty consistent back there. As opposed to, I'm not going to mention the name, but the gentleman before him who cost us the 49ers game. I'm not going to mention names, but so you could see how important it is, again, to have a guy back there that can catch the football. As a coach, I always tell my punt returner, I'm not expecting you to score. If you score, that's great. But what I am expecting you to do is to catch a football and give back to our offense. So,
I agree with you. Having him reliable hands, that's great. I would still just like to see a little bit more dynamic return ability. Yeah, but I could live with him being there another year. I could, but
you don't see a lot of. I mean, there's probably a handful of guys in this league that are dynamic as return guys. I think Agnew is his name from Jacksonville. He's one of those guys where he gets the ball in his hands. He's pretty dynamic. The Bills guy, we saw him at the end of the year, the returner for the Bills. So there's a couple guys in the league, but there's not too many guys back there that are, we're not seeing the Deion Sanders of the history, what was the guy for Devin Hester? We don't see those
Yeah.
kind of guys
Yeah.
anymore that, can take it to the house all the time, anytime they touch the football. But let's move on from wide receiver and let's go to tight end. Another interesting position, Mon. You got 4 tight ends on this roster. Hayden Hurst obviously was a 1-year guy. Interesting to see what happens with him. But you have Hayden Hurst and Drew Sample, both free agents. And then you have Devin Asiai and Mitchell Wilcox, both still under contract coming back. So, again, another interesting position, tight end. And I'm not a huge mock guy like you. I know you love the mocks, but I'm not a big mock guy like you. But I've seen tight end in quite a few of the mocks that I've looked at, right there at 28.
Yeah, me too. I think most of the mocks that I've seen has a tight end at the 28 pick. There's so many guys. There's the Kincaid. There's the tight end from Notre Dame. There's a one from Oregon State, Musgrave. There's going to be a lot of them. They're all built differently. The Bengals are definitely going to have to come out of this draft with maybe 1 or 2 tight ends. There's a guy from Iowa State, Laporta, that's pretty good too. Out of the guys that played last year, though, I see Hurst returning. Wilcox is going to be there. I'm not sure Sample is going to be back. The Sample pick haunts me a little bit. I was a little high on it when it happened. A lot of people were down, but I was. He's pretty much a blocker only. He's not overly athletic. He's a big guy. He's great at blocking. I think the Bengals' run game was hurt a little bit when he was injured this year. The gentleman from Notre Dame, Mayer is his name.
Mayer,
he's a Cincinnati kid. Twitter is ablaze. Bring him home. Bring him home. I'm not crazy about him. From what I've read in some of my draft publications, and I know he's a tough guy. He's a great blocker, but he is not going to test well at the combine. He's not He's not a super athlete, and I know he's not as big as Drew Sample. Actually, they might be about the same size, 6'4", 6'5", 250. I don't want another Drew Sample in the first or second round.
But what about another Tyler Eifert? I mean, take the injuries away. I mean, and I know it's hard to do that, but take the injuries out of Tyler Eifert's career, and Tyler Eifert pick could have been a home run. I mean, he could have been one of those dominating tight ends in the NFL if it wasn't for injury. And not only injury, but catastrophic injury, 2 of them that we witnessed. I'm not saying tight end at 28. I'm just saying if you can get a home run guy like a Tyler Eifert at 28, if you're the Bengals, I think you have to do that. Remember the only free agent starting, the only starting free agent on offense is Hayden Hurst. He is the only starter. When the Bengals line up their best 11, Joe Mixon is not a free agent. None of the offensive linemen are free agents. Joe Burrow is not. Our 3 starting receivers are not. Hayden Hurst is the only free agent on offense, starter wise. I don't know. Tight end's kind of one of those positions. They're scary when you take them in the first round because obviously we got burned with Jermaine Gresham. And again, Tyler Eifert, I don't think you can really count that because he had just some horrible, freaky injuries. But
yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I mean, Eifert, to me, I could be wrong about the current Notre Dame tight end not testing well. I don't think he will. From what I read, he's not known for his great athleticism. I think the only comparison between them two is they played at the same college. Eifert was a good athlete. Mm-hmm. You're right. The injuries, I mean, it's a shame because he was at, I don't want to use the word elite, but he was a very special tight end for a few years.
I would use the word elite. I would say for about a 2-year period, he was one of the best tight ends in the NFL.
Just had bad luck, horrible luck. And I just love the fact that he's still a Bengal at heart. I love how he tweets about the Bengals. I love it too. But we are going to get a tight end early. We have to. And don't forget, Jake, in free agency, tight end's going to be a good position if they want to consider free agents. And I want Hurst to come back. Listen, he reminds me a little bit of the Joe Mixon. You know how energetic he is. He gets the team fired up. I'd love to have Hayden Hurst back if the price is right. They have a lot of players they have to sign.
I'm
It's
going
going
to
to
be
be
honest with you.
a little bit of an unknown.
I'm going to be honest with you, Maan. I'm sorry cutting you off, but I'm
No,
going to be
you're
honest
good.
with you. I think Hayden Hurst is almost guaranteed to come back. I have a feeling. I think this coaching staff loves him. I think he's a great locker room guy, and you know how Coach Taylor feels about the locker room guys. I'm gonna be honest. I think Hayden Hurst is almost guaranteed to be a Bengal. I really do, because I don't think the Bengals are going to have to dump a lot of money into that position. So I could see them drafting. I could see a Hayden Hurst re-sign for a year or two, and then drafting a guy at 28. I could definitely see that, Mon, 100%. All right,
It could
let's move
happen.
on to the O line, and here we go. I said it earlier. Mon, no, only one offensive lineman on this depth chart is a free agent, and that is Max Sharping, the guy that we picked up right before the season. So you have obviously Jonah Williams, Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Lelo Collins, Akeem Adeniji, Trey Hill, Jackson Carman, Ben Brown, who got injured before the season, and then again Max Sharping. Oh, and Deontay Smith as well. So Max Sharping, the only free agent in that offensive line room. But do we feel good with the offensive line, Mon? I'm not so sure I do. And I think it was you in our text chat. You said you got a feeling that the Bengals are going to go out and get an offensive tackle. We saw what's his name, Taylor Lewan. He's already chomping at the bit to come block for Joe Burrow. Again, the Joe Burrow effect is real. What do you think, Mon? Do you know only one free agent, but do you feel good about that room?
I don't actually. The interior of the offensive line, I feel great about. Kappa, Karras, and Volson are going to be fine. Volson, we talked a lot about him last week. Started off rough, got better. We just can't give up on him. Year two, like Dave Lapham always says, players make the biggest jump. He's going to be year two for him. I think the interior is set. Would I like to have better depth there? Absolutely. Offensive tackle is, to me, is a critical need. Jonah Williams, guaranteed $12, $15 million. He's going to be the starter. Jonah Williams is okay. I'm not too concerned about him. I just don't like it when he plays Myles Garrett. It scares the heck out of me. But is he going to be there in
any elite pass rusher?
Is he going to be there in 2 years? We don't know. Right tackle, we understand Collins. We signed him for 3 years. Back issues, the ACL, we cannot depend on him. Now, I did say that in our text, but I was basically repeating what I heard on some podcasts. Paul Daner, Jay Morrison, they brought up this offseason. They do it every year, charts. How would you manipulate the salary cap? They have a spreadsheet created. It's pretty neat. What Paul Daner shared his, and he brought up some really valid points. The Bengals struggled drafting and developing offensive linemen. They do. That's a factual statement. He brought up this point. He didn't word it this way, but this is how I interpreted it. The Bengals went 4-4 the first 8 games of the season. 4 new starters on the offensive line. 4. Yes. It took them time to gel. Some bumps in the road. We saw that firsthand. A Pittsburgh team that was struggling. They came out and they just attacked that offensive line. They made Joe Burrow uncomfortable, ended up losing the game. We should have won week 1 in Cincinnati. It took us time to develop that continuity, and that offensive line really started to gel. He brought up this point. You bring in a rookie right tackle at 28. He could have a great future, but the first game, second game, third game, everybody is going to be zeroing in on him. He's going to have growing pains. It could cost the Bengals a game or two. That could be home field advantage down the road. Do you want to do that this year? He and his little presentation for his, off-season moves for the Bengals, he said the Bengals should go all in and get McGlinchey or the tackle from the Falcons, McGarry, or the kid from Florida that plays for the Jaguars, their offensive tackle. Go all in, get your right tackle, get it fixed for the next 5 years. I agree with him. And he also had a mock draft where he
What's
had
his
the
name?
Bengals.
Taylor? You talking about Taylor?
Yeah, Taylor. I forget his name.
Taylor.
Juwan Taylor. Juwan
Yeah.
Taylor. He had the Bengals. Paul Dehner had the Bengals in his mock draft after they made this move at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
First round pick was a tight end. Second round pick was a running back from UCLA. Third round pick was a wide receiver. Went offensive heavy the first 3 picks. And then you can pick up a tackle in the 4th or 5th, hopefully draft and develop. But I'm not saying that's going to happen. I do agree with that. I agree with everything that he said. I want the Bengals to go in and get a right tackle to work with Kappa for the next 3 years, Karras for the next 2 years, Volson for the next 3 years. Left tackle, we know who we have for 1 year. But this team will draft at least 2 tackles in this draft. They
Mon,
will.
I'll be honest with you, Mon. I'll be honest with you. I don't. Going back and looking at it, drafting an offensive lineman in the first round has not been very kind to the Cincinnati Bengals. As a matter of fact, I think the last elite offensive lineman that we drafted in the first round was probably Willie Anderson, as far as the latest one. I mean, obviously Andrew Whitworth was a second rounder, so he wasn't a first round guy. But after Willie Anderson, I can't think of an offensive lineman that we drafted in the first round that ended up being that elite of a player. So I guess what my point is that I agree. I think the tackle position is a need, but you definitely don't want to reach there because the Bengals have not had very good luck drafting offensive linemen in the first round. Now, obviously, with Anthony and Willie, I mean, we've had a couple of Hall of Fame guys, but those are far and few between when it comes to the Bengals drafting offensive linemen.
Yeah, I listen. The one person that I could think of that turned out to be a really good pro, unfortunately, he's not on the Bengal roster now, is Kevin Zeitler. He was picked 27, I believe,
Yeah,
in the first round. He's a good pro. The Bengals didn't want to pay him that $100 million.
He was a good pro. But he wasn't an elite guy. He wasn't a guy that, I don't want to sound bad, but he was replaceable. I mean, Andrew Whitworth wasn't replaceable, but he was replaceable, I thought.
Right. Well, Jake, the biggest concern to me, it's what you said about the first round. You're absolutely right. You can't disagree with that. They're very just the recent history of Cedric Abuoy, the second round pick Fisher. There's so many players they've drafted that just have not panned out. They have to do something. They have to come out of free agency with one quality tackle, and they have to draft an offensive tackle round 2, 3, 4, or even round 1. They have to get one that they can develop because we don't have any tackles right now. We really don't.
I mean, Akeem Adeniji is not a tackle. I mean, I know they try to play him at guard. It struggled at guard this year. He played tackle, and he had a couple of decent games, but he is not a guy that I want in the football game. Jackson Carman, again, you just don't know what you're getting. And Deontay Smith, I'm not sure what's going on with that guy, but I mean, again, maybe another doghouse guy. I just don't get why we haven't seen more of him. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but I'm very curious on why he didn't get a shot over Adeniji. But to me, it's just I don't know. I don't feel good about the depth. I feel good about the 5, even Jonah. I feel good about Jonah. I think he's okay. He's not very good against the elite pass rushers, but I think he's an okay bridge guy for at least 1 year. But
he's guaranteed that salary. He's going to be the starter next year.
Yeah.
Let me read something from Pro Football Focus real quick. Out of 77 guards, Cordell Volson was 65. Alex Kappa out of 77 guards was 22. Hakeem Adeniji out of 81 tackles came in at number 77. Jonah Williams came in at 62. Ted Karras came in the 15th best center in football. The interior of our line is set. It's only going to get better, but we have to get some work at tackle.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Here we go. We are going to go to linebacker. And linebacker, we have one free agent, but it is a big one that you and I have talked about, and that is Mr. Jermaine Pratt. Obviously, Logan Wilson still under contract. I could see him getting re-signed sometime this offseason. Akeem Davis-Gaither, Marcus Bailey, Joe Bocci, and Clay Johnson, all guys that are still under contract. We talked a little bit about this position, and I said you and I disagreed about this because you think somehow that Marcus Bailey is going to just jump right in and take over Jermaine Pratt's spot, but that's not a knock against Marcus Bailey. I think he's that's another great special teamer, by the way. That along with Michael Thomas and Stanley Morgan Jr. too, is like Marcus Bailey had a great year this year on special teams. I like the guy. I want him on the roster. But if Jermaine Pratt does not get re-signed, Mon, now linebacker has become one of those positions where you got to go get a guy that's not on this roster to line up next to Logan Wilson. I know you don't agree with that, but Akeem Davis-Gaither, he's not a 3-down linebacker. He's just not. I love the guy. I think he's an incredible athlete, and I want him on the roster. I want him as a Bengal, but there is not a 3-down backer. I know Jermaine Pratt didn't play a lot of 3rd down, but Jermaine Pratt in the pass game, not too bad. They lose Jermaine Pratt, man. They got to go get somebody. They got to go find somebody.
Yeah. I had lunch today with our buddy Justin, and he agrees with you. We were talking about it. He thinks linebacker is a very, very sneaky need, especially if they lose Pratt. Listen, I don't expect.
Wow, and that might be the first time Justin and I have agreed on something.
I don't agree.
Very odd episode.
Yeah, it is. I don't think Marcus Bailey is going to come in and be Jermaine Pratt, but Marcus Bailey was drafted. He's been developed, and he is the next in line. And he's going to have to be the guy. Is there going to be a drop off? There is going to be a drop off. But Marcus Bailey is a good. Listen, he was a 7th round pick. Late round pick.
Listen, I'm not saying I don't want him on the roster. I'm saying this team right now there's a window, and it's a good sized window because you have Joe Burrow, but there is a window right now, Mon. This team right now has one of the best rosters in the NFL, and right now might be the favorite in the AFC. You cannot just have okay. You've got to have dudes. You still got to have dudes. And if Jermaine Pratt is not that dude, you got to go find one.
Jake, the chances of Jermaine Pratt remaining a Bengal slim. Okay, so do you want them to go out in free agency and spend close to the money they'd spend on Jermaine Pratt to get a linebacker, or you want them to draft somebody in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round? What are you saying?
I'm saying I don't know. I don't know what you do, but I'm saying that whoever's on the roster behind Logan Wilson, the replacement's not on the roster. That's what I'm saying.
I think
I'm not saying draft. I'm not saying free agent. I don't know. I don't know what the best way to approach that is. I want Jermaine Pratt back. That is the best. That's the best situation for the Bengals is having Jermaine Pratt back. And I'll tell you what, you think it's slim. I'm going to disagree with you, especially with Lou coming back. I think Jermaine Pratt has a very good chance of re-signing with the Bengals. But my point is this. Whatever you do, free agent or draft, the replacement for Jermaine Pratt is not on the roster right now. It is not, Mon.
If Gether, Akeem Davis or Bailey steps in and has to play that role, they're not going to play as good as Pratt. You're right. There's no denying that. But the Bengals have drafted those guys to be potential starters in the NFL. And Jake, the only way we're going to know how they really are is they have to play. Every team in the NFL drafts players in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round for these exact scenarios because they can't keep everybody.
I know, Mon. But every team doesn't have a Super Bowl roster, Mon. You understand what I'm saying? Listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's hard. It's hard to have all these great players. I know that. But what I'm saying is not every team has a Super Bowl roster like the Bengals have right now. And you can't go into the season saying, well, here's the replacement. He's going to be okay. You can't do that. You cannot do that with this roster. You can't. You just cannot do that.
We don't know if he's going to be okay. He could be great. He could be poor. We don't know. That's the beauty of the NFL and rosters. Jake, it's impossible to sign all your stars.
So you don't.
That's why you have. Go ahead.
Good. I was just going to say, you don't think that we've seen enough to know that?
I think Jermaine Pratt has been a starter for 4 years. So has Logan Wilson. There have been our main 2 linebackers. We only keep 6 linebackers. That's it. Our roster, it's one of the smallest position groups on the team. We only keep 6, sometimes 5. I think the backups that we have are being groomed to fill in for these guys. We saw when Logan Wilson was hurt, how these guys stepped in and played well. I think the replacement, if Pratt doesn't sign, and I want him to sign, I would love for him to sign. I would love for him to remain a Bengal. I said it last week. He was the second best defensive player on the roster last year. It is going to be a drop off, but I believe it's going to be Akeem and it's going to be Bailey as the main backups.
I'm going to say this real quick, and then we got to move on. I'm going to say this real quick. I'm going to get the last word. I'm going to say this real quick. Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Marcus Bailey, all drafted 3 years ago. They have been on the roster for 3 years, Mon. I think that's a sample size enough. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to move on. Here we go. All right.
That makes no sense. You make absolutely 0 sense on that statement. They don't play with 3 linebackers. That doesn't. You don't make any sense.
No, I'm saying all 3 of those guys have been on this roster for 3 years, Mon.
Right.
3 years. You've had 4 guys. You've had Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Marcus Bailey, and Akeem Davis-Gaither have been there for at least 3 years.
Right. But the Bengals play with 2 linebackers.
Time has Marcus Bailey earned, Mon?
So who do you want him to beat out? Logan Wilson? We just said Wilson and Pratt are the best.
I'm not saying beat out, but Mon, he barely plays.
Jake,
and you want him to go in and be the starting Mike?
Jake, they only play with 2 linebackers on defense.
I understand.
It's sometimes
that,
only 1. So how do you want him to play? It makes no sense.
Because, Mon, there's no depth there. There's no depth at that position. There's just not. Listen to Justin. He's right about this.
How many times? Okay, Pratt has been relatively healthy. Now Logan Wilson was hurt.
Logan Wilson was not relatively healthy.
So was there a massive drop off when those guys came in?
Joe Bocci,
10 in a row.
Joe Bocci played over Marcus Bailey.
Marcus Bailey was coming off an injury.
Mon, but he wasn't injured. He wasn't injured.
Hey, fans, comment on this. This is a good one. Comment.
You were like the Marcus Bailey bandwagon. It's crazy. We got to move on, Mon. You're driving me nuts.
Let's go.
All right, here you go. D-line. Let's go D-line because obviously defensive back is the big one. D-line real quick. Mon, we don't have one free agent on D-line. How crazy is that? As good as this D-line has been, not one free agent. Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Trey Henderson. You could argue that that's one of the best starting D lines in the NFL. Cam Sample, Josh Tapau, Zach Carter, Joseph Asai, Jeff Gunner, which obviously got hurt, and Jay Tuafele, who also ended up getting banged up there at the end. Mon, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think about that group of guys? Do we need? I know you think we need another pass rusher, but how are you feeling about the defensive line? Why you got that grin on your face?
Because I was about to say a Marcus Bailey line about the defensive line. It's all good.
I don't want to hear any more about Marcus Bailey.
Okay, no more. We're done. Now, listen, we did talk about the offensive line, how the Bengals have struggled drafting and developing. I don't think they've really had that problem when it comes to the defensive line. They've done a good job. They've done a good job with Hubbard. Tapau was an undrafted free agent that's played really well. He's underappreciated.
The trade for BJ Hill, right?
BJ Hill, really good, acquiring talent. I hope Zach Carter continues to develop. I told you I watched the Saints game today.
Don't forget about Joseph Asai.
Yes, Osai flashed in that game. He was really good in the Saints game. Jake, we can make the argument the last 6, 7 games of the season, he was our best pass rusher.
He
He was
was.
really good.
He
And
was.
then, of course, we have our two studs, Hubbard and Hendrickson. I keep on saying about Pro Football Focus. Hendrickson was top 10 for defensive ends in Pro Football Focus. Listen, this team knows what they're doing. That's why I still have high hopes for Zach Carter and some of these other guys you mentioned, Gunther. I think they're going to develop. That defensive line coach is underappreciated. Marion
I
Hobby
agree.
is so good. Everywhere he goes, he was in Jacksonville and they were, I think, led the league in sacks or top 5 in sacks. Everywhere he goes, they're very productive. Our sack numbers did drop, and we talked about that last week. I could still see them maybe getting an interior 3 technique defensive lineman early in the draft. You can never have enough good pass rushers, but overall, uh, very highly paid defensive line. Our
Yes.
4 starters all make over $10 million a year, and
But that's how it
that's
should
not
be,
a bad
man.
thing. Yeah, you're right. You're
That's how it should
absolutely
be.
right.
I mean, that's the
Yes.
one position where across the board you could say,
Absolutely.
if you have 4 guys making over 10 million playing D line, you're going to have a good D line. I mean,
Yes.
those are we have 4 dudes there. You and I disagree about the outside pass rush because I love Joseph Asai. Again, that's why BJ Hill and DJ Reader stood up for him after that Chiefs game,
Yes.
because without him, the last 7 games, we might not be playing in that game. Uh,
Yes.
he made some incredible plays, and like you said, might have been our best pass rusher. Where I think we struggle with that is from the interior. I think there's got to be some kind of development with the interior pass rush. BJ Hill, DJ Reader, those guys are the starters. They are both dudes. That's why we have the best run defense in the NFL, or one of the top 5. But on those third down, on those passing downs, we got to find a guy that can rush the passer, and maybe it's Zach Carter. I don't think there's enough of a sample size yet from Zach Carter, but or really Cam Sample. I don't know, but they got to find some kind of interior pass rush to help on those passing downs.
Jake, you mentioned last week how important DJ Reader was. You really did a good job talking about him. He's the Joe Burrow of our defense. Pro Football Focus, out of 126 defensive tackles, have him ranked number 6.
Oh yeah,
He's a special dude. He's a
well,
special guy.
Let me tell you where Jake Owens has him, number 1.
Yeah, listen,
To
your
me,
boy BJ Hill's number 36. That's pretty impressive too.
that's pretty impressive. And
Yeah.
I've always been on the BJ Hill bandwagon. And again, like I said, when DJ Reader went down this year, BJ Hill carried that interior of that defensive line. And BJ Hill's been an incredible player. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we won't go into that trade again, but what an incredible trade. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what we gave away to get BJ Hill. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. It's one of the biggest trades. It's right up there with James Brooks for Pete Johnson,
And
that's a big one.
by the way, we're talking about Price. That was another first round offensive lineman.
Yeah. Gosh, that's right. That's
Right?
right. Good job. I forgot about him.
Yeah,
He's
Billy
forgettable.
Price. Billy
He's
Price in
forgettable.
the first round. Ooh, that first round
was a
offensive
terrible
line
pick.
thing, not good.
God,
All right.
the Lions screwed us on that one. Ragnow was going to be ours.
Oh yeah, you wanted the what's his name?
Frank
Ragnarok?
Ragnow. He was going to be a
Ragnow,
Bengal,
yeah.
and they took him right from us.
That's right.
A-holes.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Here's the big one, Mom. This is where we're hurting a little bit, and you and I talked about it on last week's show. At defensive back, three starters, because as you said, we play a lot of that nickel defense with 5 DBs. 3 of those guys free agents. So we get Cheeto back, which is very exciting. He's one of the top 3 corners in the NFL. You have Mike Hilton coming back. Again, both of those guys under contract, which is incredible that we have both of those guys still under contract. Von Bell, Jesse Bates, both starting safeties. And then Eli Apple as well. You also have Trey Flowers, who is a free agent. Tyson Anderson, as you said, did not see a lot of him his rookie year. He did not play this year. Dax Hill, we saw spurts of him. You think he's Jesse Bates' replacement. I disagree. I don't think he is there ready to take that spot. Again, same kind of situation as the Marcus Bailey thing. Cam Taylor-Britt is a superstar in the making. He is going to be a Bengal for a long time. I just absolutely think the world of him. Michael Thomas, the special teams guru and captain. Sorry again, I can't believe I couldn't remember his name, but Michael Thomas, a free agent. Again, one of our best special teams players. You have Brandon Wilson, who I just don't see making this roster. You have Jalen Davis, who I'm not really even going to mention. And then they did pick up that Chris Lamons from the Chiefs. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yeah.
So anyway, this DB room is boy, it could get hit hard. Hopefully, out of all those guys, Mon, all those free agent DBs, and I think, what did I say? There's 5 of them. Yeah, I think 5 of them I said. Von Bell's got to come back. He has got to come back. I think
agree.
out of those 5, would I like Jesse Bates back? Yes. Is that realistic? Absolutely not. That is not realistic. Actually, 6. Sorry, I said 5, but 6 DBs are free agents. Out of that group, please, Bengals, bring Von Bell back. He's a captain. He's a locker room guy. He is one of the leaders on this defense. We have got to have Von Bell back. But this is a position, Mon, that if they do not go out in free agency and get, 1 or 2 of those 2-tiered guys, I think the draft turns right around back on defensive back. I just do. I don't think – I know we didn't see a lot of Tyson Anderson. And I think – and we didn't mention Alan George. Our guy Alan George also coming back, who a guy that you and I both think the world of. Alan George is another DB coming back. But, man, I don't know.
I love the starters. I have no problem with our top 3 cornerbacks. Depth is going to be an issue. If the injury bug hits in camp, it could be really bad. Listen, they are going to go out and get a couple free agents. They have to, and they're also going to spend some quality draft capital on cornerbacks. That they have to. I expect the first, second, or third round pick to be a cornerback. I expect at least one free agent addition. The one thing, I was talking to a coworker today, he really follows football. He's really saying some things about Eli Apple, how, this, that, and this. I had to educate him a little bit. Eli Apple, with all this chirping and Twitter stuff, that's all everybody talks about that. They don't realize he's actually played really well for the Bengals. And, listening to some podcasts from the beat writers, I don't know if the Bengals are getting tired with all the Twitter banter with him and other players. They might be getting tired of that. I don't know if that's the case, but Eli Apple has been a very decent player for the Bengals, and I wouldn't be sad if he came back as a cornerback 4.
I was about to say, cornerback 4, I'm okay with.
Cornerback 4. Now, listen, we're going to disagree on Dax Hill. Dax Hill was a first-round pick, safety from Michigan, drafted because they could not sign Bates, and he's going to be the starter. He is going to. If he's not the starter, that's a bad look on the Bengals front office for drafting him in the first round. Is he going to have some lumps? Absolutely. But a first-round pick, Kyle Hamilton started multiple games this year, and he's a first-round pick for the Ravens. Dax Hill is going to be the starter at free safety with Von Bell. I agree with you 100%. Von Bell has to be a Bengal. That's a must. That's one of the biggest. It's going to happen. It has to happen because he is the glue to that secondary. He is the glue. But, Jake, they are going to sign 1 or 2 free agents, and they're going to – I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a couple cornerbacks because we need to develop some depth.
Yeah, and you look at this cornerback situation, Mike Hilton, Cheeto, CTB, right? Those are your starting 3. I can live with that. You bring Von Bell back, boom. There's 4 of your starting 5 guys, and those guys are dudes. We line up. We have those 4 guys lining up on week 1. I'm excited. After that, I agree. Listen, I'm gonna say this about Dax Hill. Don't forget this. when we did that mock draft, I picked Dax Hill. I wanted the Bengals to take Dax Hill. I'm a big Dax Hill fan. Is he ready? Is he ready, Mon? And it goes back to this thing that I keep saying. This is a Super Bowl contending roster. Is a second-year safety who did not play a lot of safety this year. Is he ready to fill those shoes? Again, I'm not saying he has to come out and be an all-pro, but is he ready, Mon? I just don't think so. Will he be ready eventually? Who's to say? I think he's a great player. I'm excited the Bengals drafted him. But if he lines up week 1 as our starting safety, I'm going to be a little nervous. I'm just going to be honest with you.
If he stinks up training camp, in the off season right now, he's going in as the starter. But of course, there's mini camp. There's all kinds of preseason. If he is struggling, hopefully they'll have an option B. I think they will, and we'll see. We'll see. Yeah,
Special teams, real quick, Mon. We got everybody coming back because Adamitis just signed a 1-year deal. That's the big signing so far. And don't make light of that because that is important.
It is.
I just saw another special teams guy, long snapper, get signed as well. Those guys are hard to find, and Cal played really well for us. I was very impressed. That's tough to go in as a rookie in that situation. Clark Harris. I hope he retires a Bengal. He's a free agent. He's not going to be coming back with his team. Drew Chrisman, Evan McPherson, both returning. Interesting, real quick. Both of our starting returners are the free agents we talked about. Trent Taylor, Travion Williams, both of them free agents. So going to be very interesting to see, Mon, where the Bengals go with this roster. And very, very excited to see. I cannot wait for free agency, Mon. Any last words before we get out of here?
No, just one thing about I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a punter late. Chrisman is not guaranteed a spot, I don't think. He had his lumps like all the other rookies, and he could wind up being our starting punter, but I wouldn't be surprised if they draft one. Overall, Jake, I'm so happy with this roster. Yes, there's going to be some changes, but this team is going to get better. This roster, which is scary to the NFL, is going to get a lot better over these next 60 days. The next 60 days are going to be huge, and it's going to be fun talking about it on the Bengals Pulse.
I agree. And hopefully next week on the Bengals Pulse, we are celebrating the signing of Mr. Joe Burrow. There's a chance.
Get him on the show. Let's get him on the show.
All right, Bengal fans. That's another edition of the Bengals Pulse. If you liked this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Stitcher, Apple, and Spotify. Make sure you follow us at Bengals_Pulse9 and on Instagram. Sorry, that's on Twitter. On Instagram, the same without the at. Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, make sure if you like this podcast, give Mon and I that 5-star review. We very much appreciate it. Check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Wincinnati Podcast Network. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hooday, Bengal fans. We will see you guys next week. Hopefully celebrating a Joe Burrow signing.
Let's do it.